We have, of course, this situation where a lot of companies, organizations today look at having are already set up with many different service providers, or looking into how to actually improve a service integration management with the ecosystem of more service providers. So SIAM is looking into different service providers, an ecosystem where you need to have governance, integration, coordination, collaboration across. And this is in SIAM is based on an operating model where you have various practices such as people and tools and technology and measurement, and input in various layers. So you have the service provider layer at the bottom, the operational layer where we actually execute the processes. You have the service integrator layer, which is then actually the function that owns the processes, and have the service delivery managers, where you put in those functions and you have the accountability of the processes on behalf of the customer organization. So these three layers are always existing in a SIAM setup. And then what kind of service integrator model you're looking for, if it is internal, like it's shown here, or if it is external or hybrid or lead supplier. Those are, of course, different options based on your desires and needs and capabilities that you would like to build. So that's very, very short on SIAM. And at KPMG, we both work with FitSM and SIAM. And what we have seen across the board when we do design and implementation is that there are some challenges that are quite happening all the time in more or less extent. And I've chosen the KPMG target operating model with the 6 components of governance and processes, performance and data, people, technology, and service delivery model to kind of accentuate where these challenges are. And this target operating model also corresponds quite well to SIAM. So just as examples, I can mention that what we very often see is when we look into the governance and the service delivery model, it is so important to understand what should retained capabilities be in the customer organization. What are we not outsourcing? What are core capabilities? It could be enterprise architecture. It could be cybersecurity. It could be PMO. Whatever it is for your organization, it needs to be established and also then built up to make sure that we can retain those capabilities. And on the other hand, the service delivery model. So whatever we choose of model for the service integrator, internal or external, do we give them the right mandate to act on behalf of us as customer organization? Well, very often we don't. We put them there, we put the process owner, but we don't give them the mandate. So that's a challenge that we very often see. Another challenge that we see is on the performance and data, that service level are silo-based. So we, per contract, we look into service levels that the service provider should obey by and perform by, but we're not looking across the service. So end to end, what is actually the availability, and for incident management, how do we actually measure the incident life cycle and the various service providers within that incident resolution time. So across the board, quite many challenges that we see. And my hope for this session now is to show you how can you actually use then FitSM and SIAM for better together. So I will show you with some use cases how we in KPMG use FitSM to bridge some of these challenges that exists and or shows when you try to do a SIAM adoption. And then finally, I will finish off also then with the very specifics on service governance, putting it all together using the common service data model, in this case of ServiceNow. So to give just a general process model, I use the SIPOC. And I use the SIPOC, suppliers, input, process, outputs, and customers, because it has this suppliers and customer perspective that we very often are struggling with in a SIAM context. Who is actually the supplier? Who is the customer? because very often one supplier is delivering to another supplier, and there is actually a customer-supplier relationship there as well. So this is something that a SIAM setup requires, this focus on input and output and understanding on who is delivering to who and how is that delivery going to happen and how many actually stakeholders are involved in such a process. And to do this, when many service providers are to collaborate, integrate, and have end-to-end service management, we need a flexible approach, because we cannot dictate exactly how each and everybody of the service providers are to act. We need to have a flexible approach where the various service providers can keep their standard operating procedures, their technical expertise, and apply that to an overall process model that then actually gives the right input and output throughout the process. And what we've seen during the last couple of years is that FitSM is actually such a framework. It really helps us to get this flexible and operational framework that is required from SIAM. And to prove from some examples, I've taken here service portfolio management, problem management, and change management. So the first line on service portfolio here, that's the definition of purpose coming from FitSM. So for service portfolio management, I hope you all recognize it's to maintain the service portfolio and to manage services through their life cycle. Hope you've seen that before. But below there, I put in SIAM considerations. And these SIAM considerations come from SIAM best practice, because for each process, SIAM best practice have given us guidance on what are considerations that we need to tackle, take into account to actually succeed with, in this case, service portfolio management. So you see SIAM considerations for service portfolio management, you see SIAM considerations for problem management, and you see them as well for change management. And this exists for all the 14 processes within FitSM that then can be matched and aligned to the processes within SIAM. And where SIAM is really good on these considerations, what we need to take into account, FitSM is much better on actually explaining that process, both on a requirement level, but also on the operational level. So it really takes one or two sticks going further down to understand how the process should work. So what I want to show you now is taking service portfolio management and change management as example of how you actually can use these processes to support your SIAM adoption. So I will start off with service portfolio management. So in FitSM, in part 1, we have the requirements. And for service portfolio management, there are 4 requirements that you can read here. These are very, very good requirements that we can all align across service provider landscape should be the guiding principles for service portfolio management. And if I click more, I get into part 2 of FitSM, where we have the process activities. So here you have the recommended activities for service portfolio management: objective, key questions, initial process setup, inputs, outputs, activities, and the process chart. So now I have the FitSM assets. And then I take the SIAM considerations that we looked into earlier. So there were 4 considerations coming out of SIAM that we need to somehow handle and tackle. And one of them is highlighted here as a clear definition of all services, service providers, dependencies, and relationships between services is required for transition to SIAM. I think we all can agree to that this is paramount within service portfolio management to actually have this definition of both the services, service providers, dependencies. So how can we then use the assets within FitSM? Well, to start off, we have 2 of the requirements that goes towards this consideration. that we should have a service portfolio, and that it should be all services should be part of the service portfolio, no matter where they are in the life cycle. And for each service, internal and external suppliers involved shall be identified, including as relevant federation members, contact points, roles, and responsibilities. So what we're doing is that we're saying, dear service providers, part of this SIAM setup, these are the requirements within service portfolio management. Do you agree to that these are key to success for service portfolio management? Or use it in the RFP when you're actually then looking for a new supplier. And I have not to this date seen anyone that object to these requirements, saying this, of course, we also look at service portfolio management in this way. And going forward, so how do you do then the clear definition of all service providers? Well, in the part 2 of service portfolio management, the initial process setup, we talk about defining a way to describe, specify specific service, so templates, or talk about an initial service portfolio, including service specifications, and also to create a map of bodies, parties, organizations involved in delivering services. So here we get a quite good understanding of what we need to get down. It is not how. So here various, the customer organization, the service integrator or service providers can come with their input and say, this is how we do it. This is good practice in our way of delivering the services and working with service portfolio management. And then we can use that. So that's the flexible approach. And also when we look into the process chart, so here FitSM gives us a high level overview of how we work with services in the whole life cycle, from pipeline to the live services, and then the retired services as well. And this is quite good to align on, and then still it's on such a level that it is easy for the various service providers to fill in the gaps, or to fill in, this is how we do it when we evaluate a service proposal, for example. Or this is how we do it when we update retired services. And then we can agree on it across the board, or say, very good, you service provider X, this is the way you do it, fine, just as long as the input and output are as required. I'm going to pause there, take a sip of water.
Yeah, thanks, Mats, and thanks for pausing for us for a second. We have got questions flooding in from the audience. So do you want to take some of the questions now before we move on to the next part?
Before I move on to change, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So first question is coming from Michael. And Michael says, I'm missing contract management in the FitSM process model. Contract management is in SIAM, a retained capability. What would be good best practice in your opinion to cover this? As you know, the process descriptions are very high level in the SIAM body of knowledge, and therefore needs to be supported by a framework like FitSM or ITIL brackets, which is also missing contract management. Yeah,
exactly. So it is, right? So for exactly for contract management, which is a heartblood of mine. Yes, it's not in FitSM and neither in SIAM and really not in ITIL either. So here we need to look into to other bodies of knowledge. And for me, coming from KPMG, it's quite easy because we have it. So we do have the leading practice for contract lifecycle management, and that is a best practice that we have defined for our clients in our knowledge base. So we use a proprietary method for knowledge management.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. Next question is from Shalukya, and the question is, how will SIAM teams help clients in organization change management? Should SIAM teams lead OCM?
No, they are key stakeholders to organizational change management. But if you look at, if I go back to here, so the service integrator layer is the day-to-day management of the SIAM ecosystem. and it is flooded with so many activities that needs to be coordinated, aligned across the processes and the service delivery. So organizational change management has to be a retained capability within the customer organization that is then enabling the SIAM implementation.
Okay, great. Thank you. A couple more. Next one is from Steve. And Steve asks, what case studies exist describing where this approach has worked?
Well, wait for next week and you will see something coming out of KPMG Denmark as a credential.
Perfect. Thanks, Mats. Next one is from Martin. And the question is, I think a SIAM implementation needs to be constantly evolving due to the fact that the IT service providers themselves are integrating IT services into end-to-end services. What are your views on this?
Yes. So in this, the operating model here, we have the service delivery model, and to the right-hand side, I've written sourcing strategy doesn't support SIAM. So it needs to be also on a strategic level, looking into what is our sourcing strategy. Are we looking into fixing and locking in with one or two strategic partners for a long time, or are we actually doing click and fix processes that we can click out a service provider and then click a new one in? So if you don't have an appropriate sourcing strategy, the SIAM will be very, very difficult to implement and to evolve, because then it just will be the static of what is right now. So the sourcing strategy and the SIAM implementation and involvement needs to happen together.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, a couple more. So the next one again is from Chalukya, and the question is, should SIAM have separate sets of SLAs?
Not understanding the question, sorry.
Okay, perhaps Chalukya, if you could explain that one a little bit more for us, we'll come back to it later.
But what I can, maybe I understand, sorry. So SIAM does not have it, but we do have end-to-end service levels for the whole business service. And then, of course, each service provider within that service has its own service levels. So we're measuring both the end-to-end service level, be it on availability, be it on capacity, and so forth. And then, of course, we have specific targets and measurements for each and every service provider within that service delivery.
Right. Thanks, Mats. And last one for right now is from Steve. And it says, does FitSM provide guidance on common models for service integrators, customers, suppliers, supplier scope in each of the SIAM models?
Not really, but it has pros and cons. So it doesn't go into that detail. No. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. That's all the questions that we have for now, and we'll let you know in a bit if there's any more that come in.
Brilliant. Okay. Then let me take the second example, which is then change management, another process. Here you see in FitSM, there are 6 requirements. All of them, I think you would recognize and see these are pretty important requirements for change management. And again, go into part 2 of FitSM, the same approach again, looking to initial process setup, inputs, outputs, and the process chart as such. And if we again look into SIAM and look into the SIAM considerations of change management, we have 3: scope, and then a clear change policy, and organizations define different types of changes. So I highlighted the 2 ones here. And how do we solve that? Using FitSM. So what we do is that we say the clear change policy. To me, the requirements, the 6 requirements of change management from FitSM, that is a brilliant start for a change policy. If we have those, if you have those agreed, aligned within the contract and the operating manual for our service providers, we have a very good setup for how to succeed with change management. And also for the second one, then define different types of changes. So we know we often operate with normal, standard, and emergency. And here in FitSM, we have even more examples and definitions that help us to work with normal emergency and standard changes, which again is really good to use to align with the various service providers or to put in as requirements in an RFP. And finally, you have a process chart. It is not the most detailed in the world at all. We all know that change management is a complicated process with lots of approvals and back and forth. But here at least is something that we can work with. It has an approval flow, and it is concrete enough to use, to work with as a starting step, and then for the various organizations to fill in their gaps. And very often you have service providers that even we as a service integrator, we approve of it, or someone in the customer organization approves of a change. But in the service provider organization, there might be 3 approvals that are needed. I don't care as a service integrator being accountable for change management, how many approvals they need on their part, just as long as input and output are as required by the process model. And finally, I just want to emphasize that a critical success factor has proven to be, surprise, surprise, the CMDB. So the configuration management database is, as you know, a repository for all the CIs and the attributes and the relationships between them. And this is where we know what we have, we know the configuration of it, and also governance, who is actually responsible for the management, the ownership, the support of this specific CI. And very often the CMDB gets to be a flat database with just many CIs with some relations in them. But with ServiceNow, Common Service Data Model, this has really given the structure that we need. So ServiceNow's Common Service Data Model works with 4 domains that you can see here: design, build, sell, consume, and manage technical services. And for each domain, there are various stakeholders that uses the information, accesses the information, edits the information in order to work with various processes. So for example, in the blue design domain, we have the enterprise architectures. They need to understand, what does our business application landscape look like? What business capabilities are supported by our business application? How should we evolve? How should we do application rationalization? How should we do a cloud strategy, and so forth? And here in a SIAM context, we very often talk about the support and delivery. So that's much more in the orange domain here, where you see managed technical services. And here's where you define technical services, be it within network, be it within infrastructure, be it within security, be it within database and storage. And you have the various service offerings, the flavors. So you might have more service providers providing the same kind of service, technical service, but in various offerings, and you put that together. And that makes totally sense in the Common Service Data Model, because then you can relate them to each other, and you can relate it down to the actual CIs, the applications, the service, the IoT, the network gears, and so on. And for every box that you have here, you can define who is the service owner, who is the approver of a change, who is the support group, and what are the service levels defined for this service offering. So this is putting it all together, the processes by FitSM, the structure given by your SIAM approach, and actually being able to operate it and then use it for incident, problem, and change, which is the main processes within managed technical service. And that's kind of it. I just want to finish up with this one and saying that what we've seen with our clients are loads of benefits using FitSM and SIAM. To them, it might not be that they always know that we in KPMG use FitSM. It's just one of the best practices we use. But it's so good that FitSM, from the outstart of it, has this federated approach. It is not a one-to-one, a service provider and a customer, but it has this ecosystem in its way of thinking and being structured as a standard for IT service management. It really shows this clear ownership, so that we get this glue for the service integrator, so that the service integrator knows how to manage, how to govern, how to collaborate, how to integrate based on the technical services, the application services, and the business service. And again, making sure that you, from a SIAM perspective, have the retained capabilities within the customer organization, the service integrator function, and then the various service providers on an operational level. We really like that FitSM has this clear focus on requirements. It's so easy to show them, to align on them across the board of service providers. And finally, as I hope I've shown during this short talk now, we see FitSM as very operational and flexible. It has some overview, it has some detail, but it can very easily be adjusted to the specific needs of a specific SIAM setup. So I hope that some of the above has inspired you, and that you are interested into looking into more of this. And if any questions, Ellie, then I'm happy to try to answer them, hopefully in a good
way. We have questions, Mats. We do have more questions for you, so thank you for that. The first question is from VJ, and they ask, how do you calculate vendor penalty and service credits?
Yeah, that's a big topic for a 2 months discussion. I won't go into that one now, but I have very skilled colleagues in IT sourcing that eat that for breakfast, and I'm happy to share their contact data.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. Next question is from Andy, and Andy asks, what types of roles are key to have within a SIAM team?
Yes, so first, please do not refrain from saying SIAM team, for SIAM is the whole setup, but I assume you talk about the service integrator. So in the service integrator function, you need process owners. So whatever processes you define are in scope for your SIAM setup, there you need the process owner. They need to be in a specific service integrator function, and you need the service delivery managers. So the service delivery manager for the specific suppliers and contracts that we have. Those are the two main roles that you establish within the service integrator.
Brilliant, thanks, Mats. Another question from VJ. With DevOps being used heavily now in organizations, how does KPMG's change process handle these changes where CI/CD tools helping in total automation of CR?
Yes, and that's, thank you, Vijay. Yes, so maybe I also did it now when I presented it, quite an emphasis on external service provider, but actually SIAM looks into both internal service provider and external service provider. And a case we had last year, the whole development department was internal, working with DevOps and using, doesn't remember what tool it was, then doesn't really matter. But that we needed to ensure that whatever an internal service provider were developing and using CI/CD for continuous development could actually then be supported by the various service providers that were on the operations. And here we needed to have a very, very efficient change process that took into account that all that could come in the various sprints could go as standard changes, but still within the control of the CMDB. So the key here was the common service data model, and for that we use ServiceNow to ensure that we got control of who's delivering what and who's responsible for what in the change process.
Amazing, thanks, Matt. That's all the questions that we have for today. So just a quick thank you to you for sharing your experience and your expertise with our audience today. There's some brilliant feedback for you coming in the chat saying it was a great session. And thanks to our audience for joining us today. We will drop you a recording of today's session so you can watch it again. And feel free to reach out to either Mats or anybody at KPMG to hear more about FitSM and how you can use it as the glue in your SIAM adoption. So thanks again for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for hosting it.